Hello there. I have a feeling that this latest news means we will all be cancelled if we do not comply. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid many of you won't understand how deep this goes. As some of us suspected, the Marxist woke march through the institutions is cavernously wider than thought and has been a roaring success for the UK haters. Now there's concrete evidence that the banking system is being used to shut down the freedom of expression. The Tories are in a bit of a tailspin in their attempts to try and make it look as if they would really do anything about it. Debanking is part of the Great Reset world control grid, where free expression must only exist on paper, not in reality. But the establishment has been found out. So now they will wish to deflect attention and limit the fallout. And part of that is to try and get us to concentrate wholly on the antics of the banking industry that Nigel Farage so neatly exposed. Look over here, they're saying. This is where the problem is. Knowing they'll have another nibble at that particular cherry once the publicity has died down. And while probably knowing full well that this is prevalent across the broadcast industry, education from top to bottom, the civil service, the police, the NHS, the armed forces, the police forces, border force, the list goes on. The Western way of life has been under incessant attack from the hard left for many decades, and most people just blindly let it happen around them. While those of us who tried to point out the problem were dismissed as conspiracy theorists. Well, we've only seen the tip of the banking industry cancel culture iceberg, and the banking industry is just the small tip of an even more vast iceberg. Now, the latest target of the banks has turned out to be those involved in rural activities, especially if their job or interest revolves around the use of firearms. You know, those people who are legally licensed to own guns for their job, for example. Many people and organisations involved in these activities are having their personal and business accounts summarily shut down or experiencing great difficulty in opening an account. And woe betide you if you are involved in a hunting organisation. One hunt had its card readers taken offline during a fundraiser, costing them thousands in income. Now, does that mean all armed forces personnel will be debanked? And how about arms manufacturers? I see no evidence of that, maybe due to the profit the banks make from the arms manufacturers. But proceeds from violent crime, trafficking and drugs, where unlicensed firearms might be used, seem to flow freely via money laundering through our banks, doesn't it? Talking to the Telegraph, Nigel Farage said, "These banks and financial services companies are completely out of control. They are starting to dictate how we can spend our money and what we can do. This is a highly political industry, which is now a great danger to society. This is happening right through our financial system, and we need to turn the tide." The trouble, though, is that the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, and the Prudential Regulation Authority, the PRA, which have oversight of the operations of these banks, are probably also stuffed to the gunnels with those involved in the march through the institutions. But they state that the role of the FCA is financial markets must be honest, fair and effective, so consumers get a fair deal. We work to ensure that these markets work well for individuals, for businesses, and for the economy as a whole. And the PRA says, "We create policies for firms to follow as well as watch over aspects of the business. We call this supervision." It's obvious to me that they've been helping in some manner to feed this woke nonsense into the banks. But how they think this advances the UK economy is beyond me. Well, the number of accounts being shut down by businesses shows these two organisations are not up to scratch. And it's these organisations that will be tasked to investigate debanking and report back to government. The very ones that have allowed this unacceptable situation to develop right under their noses. Now, many on the hard left will claim that businesses can do as they wish, so it's tough on those that engage in activities the banks don't like. Now, that attitude would stand up to scrutiny where true choice and competition was alive and well, where an organisation could, for example, set up a separate rural bank to cater for the needs of the rural community. Maybe the National Farmers Union, the NFU, could get that ball rolling. But we do not have that level of competition within the banking system where a few really big banks own all the smaller ones. Now, governments have been quite content to let the big banks gobble up the smaller ones over the years and still have a major shareholding in the one that Farage exposed. Governments of all colours are as culpable in all of this as anyone else is. And if anyone doubts how deep all this runs, just look around you at the amount of control a small minority can exercise over the lives of the vast majority, who only want to go about their lawful activities. Greenpeace, for example, trespassed on Rishi Sunak's property with abandon, as if they had the God-given right to do as they please on someone else's property. But when a GB News programme editor, Ben Leo, walked into the Greenpeace plush and well-equipped London HQ to quiz them about that particular stunt, Leo was told that he hadn't been invited. Oh, the irony and outright arrogance of it. And when asked why they don't go and pull the same stunts in China, their reply was that Greenpeace does a lot of work in China. It may well do, but I see no evidence of eco-loons snarling up traffic in Beijing or sitting atop Xi Jinping's abode and draping oily cloth all over it. And worse, they went on to say that the UK must be the global leader. Why? And they must be having zero impact on China because Reuters just reported that China approved more than 50 gigawatts of new coal power in the first half of 2023, research by environmental group Greenpeace showed, with the world's top carbon polluter focused on energy security rather than cutting fossil fuel consumption. And further, that Chinese coal power will continue to increase at a reasonable pace into 2030. Sounds to me like we'll be hearing more of the same from China as 2050 approaches. China has big plans for the world, plans that require lots and lots of homegrown energy. The Chinese Communist Party is not listening to the eco-loons. We should be taking note of China's activities and reacting, instead of self-flagellating and rehashing pronouns. Will the eco-loons be blocking Chinese refineries and digging tunnels under their roads to make them unsafe any time soon? Answers on a postcard, please. So as deep as woke goes into the banking sector, do not be fooled into thinking that it's just the banks that have been infected with this anti-democratic, anti-UK rubbish. It is now prevalent across all sectors of our economy and society, to the point we were almost being led into the corral of thinking it was a mainstream view. Remember all the ads being presented to us as the norm, to make the country look completely different to the reality of it. These ads are made by woke organisations, paid for by woke organisations and presented to you by woke organisations. From design to marketing to broadcast, all directed by those who have selected their staff accordingly, right across the public and private sectors. The rest of us are required to work hard, hand to mouth, to make a living and pay the fees and taxes to feed this woke monster that works against the majority interests.